Well, once again, I'm back on the Ames PWR INV 5036W inverter that came back. I repaired it, I tested it, everything was good, and it came back blown up, and it had a blown up transistor or an IC right there. This is not the one. This is actually a 24 volt inverter that I scrapped out several years ago before I even posted videos on this thing. But it does actually have that little IC that I might need. So I'm going to try to get it centered up here, and I'll hit macro zoom. One moment. Okay, so there is the IC in the center of your screen. And if I shine a light on it, the numbers on it, the nomenclature are AERT2. So I do have another one of them. I have two of these units. They're exactly the same. And I think they got hooked up backwards possibly. And the other one is AERT7. So I think that might be a date code of some type, but the AE I think is what is important on this unit. Now let me zoom out. So I do actually have this unit connected to power, and as you can see, it is showing 26.8 volts input. This is a 24 volt inverter. And so let me move this over just a tad, and we'll get a voltmeter in here. And we'll take a look at the three input pins, or input output pins. So pin number 1 on this one has 14.90 volts. Pin 2 is 15.58, and pin 3 is 15.61. I'm not really seeing a terrible drop across this. So I have the power supply running. I'm going to kill the power to it, and it just beeped at me. And we'll wait till this gets down close to 0 volts. And I'm going to put this in the diode range. And let's just see if this is an actual transistor or an IC. So it should be base collector emitter. And I do see a junction there. And I do see a junction there. That might be just in circuit resistance. Let's reverse the leads. And do I have a junction again? No, I do not. And no, I do not. So it appears this is just a transistor. So I think what I'm going to try to do is pull the chip off of this board, try to clean the chip off of the other board, which might be impossible. It's pretty grenaded on there. It might have damaged the board, I'm not sure. And then we'll try to install this and see if I can get that inverter to at least power up. I need to get some closure on this unit for the customer. Once again, another one, been here way too long. And yeah, you know the story. If you don't check out the video in late January about the DUI driver that incapacitated my daughter and her husband. But let's go ahead and pull this thing off of here real quick and just see what it has to say. Incidentally, this is an LM317 adjustable regulator. Basically, it has a 1.2 volt drop unless you apply a different voltage to the adjustment pin using like a resistor divider network. Then it's a, I think it's 1.2 up to about 35 or 37 volts adjustable regulator. Similar to a 1117 that I replaced thousands of literally in Vizio TVs over the years. Okay, let me see if I can get this one off the board amicably, and we'll move forward from there. So I'm just going to start by adding flux to this. This is the Amtech NC559, and it is definitely expired, but it's still good. I do keep it sealed with a little piece of heat shrink tubing that's been pinched off on there. So it's pretty much impervious to the elements at this point. So I do have my solder station warmed up, and I just want to apply fresh leaded solder to this unit first. Try to get it down on the tab. The capacitor is right in the freaking way. Alright, and fresh solder here, and it is off of the board. That was easier than anticipated. I expected to have to use the hot air blower to get that off. Let's get some tweezers. And then it just lifted off of the board so freaking easily. Okay, that's off the board. We'll do a test out of circuit if I can without causing this thing to bounce all over the place. One moment. All right, out of circuit test. So we'll go base collector. I get nothing. I'll reverse the leads. And I see a junction. Now, if I can do this without it springing everywhere, I can get centered up on that guy. Come on, baby. Nope. May have to clamp it in some screwdrivers. And I got the leads reversed for base emitter. My bad. I see a junction there. How about collector emitter? I get nothing that way. Reversing the leads. And I get nothing that way. It looks like it's just a simple transistor. Nothing more, nothing less. Well, let's see if we can get that transistor off the board on the big inverter. Once again, adding flux. This is going to need all of the help that it can get. All right, here we go. Fresh leaded solder going on. Hopefully it will take. It is stuck to the board. Yeah, it definitely should have let go by now. Oh, it's starting to lift. All right, well, we're going to hit it with some hot air at this point. Now we got the case off. Shoot. Yeah, it will not let go of the board. It's stuck on that trace. I'll have to break the trace. There's no other way. Oh, that's not good. Not good at all. Yeah, it welded itself to that trace. It will not let go. But I see where the trace actually goes to. So maybe I can run a jumper wire to it. I'm just going to break it off, fatigue it. Goes to the first pin on this regulator from the collector. I do kind of have these two traces. They did let go peacefully. Shoot. Well, let's clean this board up and see how bad it actually is. Well, I wasn't quite ready to give up on this thing yet. I got to get this thing going for this customer. I feel so bad for her. I just want to get this thing going. So I went ahead and I mounted the transistor using, let me get a pointing device, using this lead and this lead only. So it is actually soldered to the board. I did run a jumper wire from the collector over to this point, which is where that little plate through goes to underneath the board. So let me show you the bottom of the board. Okay, so there is the bottom of the board. I did go ahead and add a jumper wire from that pin of that regulator where the trace actually tore off. And then there is the plate through. You can kind of see it under the enamel jumper wire right there. Get rid of the hair. So yes, it is connected. The collector connects to this plate through that's under the wire. You can just see the silver just barely right there. So that is good. I'm very happy with the results of this. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom out. And we'll just flip this guy up right here. And I'm going to, let's see, it's off. I'm going to apply about 38 volts to this guy. Yeah, actually about 36. There it is. Let's power this on. And look at that. The microprocessor is running. I get a green LED. As I reduce the voltage, I should get a beep when it gets too low. Yellow. There it's down to red. And I do get a beep at about 30 volts. Running the voltage up. And I get a red light at above 45 volts. So there we are back at 36 volts. And look at that. It is actually powering up, at least. That's basically just one part of the equation to get this unit up and running. And why is it... I had this folded down before. What the heck? Oh well, nevertheless, the thing is up and running. So I'm going to go ahead and take a voltmeter. I don't have any of the output FETs installed yet. So let's try to get this into view. You can kind of see it. So we'll put it on DC volts. And we do have about 36 volts on one pin of the FET. This pin should be ground, and it is. Let's verify that we get 0 ohms. 0.4. Perfectly fine with that. Now what I want to see is a frequency on this pin. Now I do see 1 volt DC. What about AC? I see 0.7 volts AC. Let's put it in frequency. And I do see 44 kilohertz. That is the switching frequency for the FETs. 44.73 kilohertz. And I'm going down the line here just to make sure everything is... That one's not right. Yeah, there it goes. 44 kilohertz. And you can't see these because they're off camera, but we're all good at 44 kilohertz on that side. And let's just go ahead and we'll move this guy over to here. I'll just do this kind of handheld. What about the other side? 44 kilohertz. Yes, so we are switching into the FETs. So that is a very good sign. Next, I'm going to go ahead and grab the infrared camera and take a look at that transistor I just replaced. And the reason, that one must not be making, there it is. And the reason I want to do that is because it's lost all of its heat sinking ability at this point, because the copper trace that it was soldered to, which acts as a semi heat sink, has been detached from the unit. So I'm going to actually put the voltage up a little bit higher than normal. I'll put it up to about 40 volts as if it were freshly charged batteries. I'll get the infrared camera out and we'll just take a look at that transistor and see if it's running hot or not. One moment. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at that regulator. And so what is running so freaking hot? So that regulator is, wow. What am I seeing that's 140? That can't be it. So here is the regulator. It's going to be very hard to see the pointing device. But the regulator's right here, and something must be this little transistor. Let me try to cool it down with my finger. Oh yeah, it's definitely warm. Yeah, as I cooled it down, you saw the temperature change. But as far as I can tell, the regulator is running very, very cool. Very happy with that. So I think at this point I'm going to slam a bunch of FETs into this thing. I have no FETs installed right now. Of course, you can't really see it with the infrared view. But there is the coil. So that is the buck converter that lives right here. This IC chip. LM2576, I think. And then I believe the heat is being generated from this little teeny tiny transistor that you can barely see right there. I think I've got the alignment pretty close on the camera. And as you're looking up right where the tip of my finger is, right, I can't even really point at it. But yeah, definitely not the transistor that I replaced is running hot. It is running very, very cool. Okay, well, let's put some FETs in it, see what's going to happen. Well, it's going to be kind of hard to hold. Very precarious position here, but I thought I'd show you the voltage on the 3 pins of this regulator IC. I want to see 5 volts on one of them. So I've got 15.73 volts on pin 1. And this is pin 2. I've got 0. And then I do have 5.07 volts on the output pin. That is absolutely perfect. Now, interesting, this was an LM317 on the other unit, but it's acting like an LM7805 on this unit. So, you get a flashlight, and sure enough, wouldn't you know it, let me shut the power off so I don't grenade this thing. And we'll flip this up. And hopefully the camera will be able to focus on this guy. I think I have it in manual focus. And look at that. It is an LA or an L7805, same as an LA7805. These will accept up to about 30 volts input and regulate it down to 5 volts on the output pin. That is what is supplying power to the microprocessor in this unit. Okay, now we're going to throw FETs into this thing and see what it has to say. And these are the FET that's going to be going back in, same part number as the original. And I did go ahead and test every single one of them with the MK168, and they are so freaking close. I got lucky on this one. They are so freaking close. I'm very happy about that. Okay, I'm going to cut away, put these in. I don't need to waste your time soldering 16 FETs on this board and 16 FETs on the other board. So, one moment. Okay, well, I have 16 FETs installed in the master board. You can see I'm mounted up there, ready to go. And I did remove this one fuse. That is the fuse that supplies power to this buck regulator that supplies power to the microprocessor. So I do not want any microprocessor action at this point. I just want to go ahead and bring the voltage up and make sure none of the FETs are leaky at this point. Now I do have to charge all of these capacitors as I raise the voltage. So there's one capacitor per FET on each side. So I've got 16 little capacitors, and they are 470 microfarad 50 volt capacitors right there. So let's head over to the power supply. This is my ancient B&K 1601 regulated power supply. I do have this other cheap Chinese one, but it only goes up to 30 volts. So I've got it on the 2 amp scale. Current limiting is set at maximum right now. I'm just going to go ahead and power this on and slowly bring it up. You just see the current jumping as the voltage increases, which is normal as it's charging the capacitors. And if there's a leaky FET or a damaged FET, I'm going to see current draw. So there we are at the 36 volts. I'm just going to push this thing all the way up to 50. And I don't see any leakage whatsoever over here. Let's go ahead and take it down on the lowest scale. It might trip out. So this is 50 milliamps full scale at this point. Slowly increasing voltage. And I want it to go back down nearly to 0. And look at that, it's still falling. So I'm very happy with that. Now it's in the negatives, obviously. So we got it up at about 38 volts. So I'm going to go ahead and switch this power supply off, put that fuse back in, and then we'll give it another try. Okay, power is applied. It is actually running. So let me go ahead and measure the DC bus right here. I should see about 160 volts if I put it in the DC mode. And I get 193. That's probably going to be as good as it gets. So let's put it back over to AC. Let those guys just lay there. And I'm going to measure the voltage on the AC terminals right here that go up to the power plug. And look at that. I've got 122 volts. Let's check the frequency. Put it in hertz. I should see about 60 hertz. And I've got 60.76 hertz. Absolutely perfection. I love it. The thing is actually working. This half of it. I still have to look at the other half. So let me find something to plug in here. A very, very low current source, because I've only got 2 amps going into this unit. I can't really push this thing. And I don't imagine these FETs are even getting warm at this point, because they're not doing really anything at all. One moment. Alright, so I do have a 1 watt LED bulb connected to the AC socket. It's just a 1 watt bulb. I don't know if this is going to like a square wave. It might go pop, or it might be fine. I'm not sure what's in these things. Let's plug this in. And look at that, we have light. It is actually working. Okay, we'll unplug that. And I'm going to get a higher wattage bulb to plug in here. Let me go ahead, and this might be too much. I think this is going to be a 12 watt, if I'm not mistaken. 17.5 watts, so that's going to be pushing it. It might trip the power supply. It might. And look at that, it's running. So this is a 100 watt equivalent LED bulb, and as you can see, it is working absolutely perfectly plugged into this unit. And we are currently drawing about 650, almost 700 milliamps at 38 volts. Let's push this up a little bit. So there's 30 volts, there's 40, and it just shut down. What the heck? One moment. Okay, lesson learned, mental note. Do not apply 50 volts. Up to like 40 is okay. Anything above that, that might be a problem. We lost 1 FET. But I ordered extras, as I always do, because I'm OCD-ness. My wife calls me OCD man. So, up and running once again. Replace the one shorted FET. There it is. And these are the FTP23N10A FETs. I don't know exactly what the rating is on these, but the 24 volt inverter has FTP11N08 FETs in it. I haven't done the research. I just wanted to order the exact replacement that came out of this unit. So that's running. We're at about 30, almost exactly 36 volts. And you can see well, it's about 35. Let's crank it up so it lights up the 36 volt LED. And that is actually about 37.5 volts. I'm perfectly fine with that. Let's get some load test measurements now that it's actually running again. If you can see the voltmeter. So DC volts, we'll measure the DC bus, which are these two lines right there, 141, which is about what I would expect. And we'll go on AC volts over here and measure the AC output voltage, which is 124 volts. And we'll put that in frequency. And we're at 60.76 hertz. There are a couple of pots right here. I'm not going to mess with those. They're factory adjusted. I don't know what they do. One might be frequency, one might be voltage. I'm not sure. I just don't want to risk it. And no, this is not actually touching a FET. It's got probably an inch of clearance. Okay. I'm going to call the master board good. So next, we need to go ahead and check the slave board, which is not going to be nearly as complicated as the master board because it does not have a microprocessor on it. It does receive its drive from the master board. So, one moment while I go ahead and check and replace all the FETs on the slave board. Okay, I must apologize in advance for the background noise. It is a very nice morning in Northern California and the wife just woke up. She turned the whole house fan on, and I have my workroom door shut, but it's still loud. Nevertheless, I have replaced all of the fuses on the slave board, and I did check these four drivers. I did check all of the 10 ohm gate drive resistors on both sides, so 16 of those. Everyone checked perfect, and every single fuse on this side, I think I pulled a couple out already. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 fuses still in the unit. Come on, focus. Really right now? I don't have time for this stuff. Every single fuse on this side is blown, which leads me to believe this thing was connected backwards. That's the only explanation I can come up with on this unit. Anyhow, there are 8 brand new 15 amp fuses installed in here, not blown at this point, so I just got to throw the FETs in here and we'll fire it up unconnected from the master board, and that's going to just test every single FET that's going in this board to make sure there's no just leaky, we don't want leakage current. Okay, stand by until I get 16 more FETs installed. One moment. Okay, well, I do have 16 FETs and 8 fuses installed in the slave side of the inverter. Let's go ahead and head on over to the power supply. Once again, we have it on 2 amp range. So I'm just going to power this on and very, very slowly bring up the voltage while watching the current. That's going to check for leaky or shorted FETs. And we'll take it on up to about 45 volts. We'll look at the current draw. As you can see, it's decreasing as the capacitors charge and form. Take it back up to 2 amps. I'm perfectly happy with that. We'll power it down. You can see the capacitors still have a charge, and the current meter is in the negative right now. Okay, let's go ahead and connect the slave side to the master side and power this whole thing up and see what happens. Okay, power has been applied. Let's measure the DC voltage here. So I've got 37.6 volts of DC going in. So let's measure the DC bus. I have 192 volts of DC on the bus. And then this is the AC output, 121.6 volts. We are drawing approximately about 250 milliamps with no load. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the light socket, and we'll get the, what was it, 12.5 watt? Can't remember. 17.5 watt LED bulb. So the supply is running. The inverter is hot right now. And I'm just going to go ahead and plug that guy in. And you can see it's lit up. Both halves are running. We're pulling about 700 milliamps right now with only a 12.5 watt load. Well, what was that? 17.5. I'm sorry. So DC bus, let's put it over to the DC range, and we are at 145 volts. The AC output is currently 123.6, and the frequency is 60.76 hertz. So this thing is running. I am so happy. This customer is going to be so pleased. I thought I was going to condemn this unit, and I'm like, I'm going to spend some more time on this thing and see if we can get this thing going for this customer. As it stands right now, it's been so long, I really can't guarantee the repair because of the failure over here of the transistor. I'm just going to go ahead and donate this unit back to the customer at no charge. Hopefully it lasts several more years. I'm not sure. I'm just going to go ahead and check the temperature of the FETs while it's running and just make sure that we don't have anything running hot. So let me get the infrared camera while this thing's up and running with no heatsink whatsoever at this point. These are the 8 output FETs that convert the DC back to a modified sine wave, which is basically a square wave. Okay, let me grab the infrared camera and I shall be right back. One moment, please. Okay, well, it's been running for maybe 2 or 3 minutes at this point. And once again, no heat sinks on any of the output transistors. And I just want to make sure everything is nice and cool as it should be. And from what I can see, all of the FETs are nice and cool. Kind of hard to see with those lugs right in the way there. But yeah, everything looks very good. There is the LED bulb at 120 degrees. Capacitors are starting to warm up very, very slightly. And we got a max temperature over here of about 102, 103 degrees. That is the buck converter at 107 degrees right there. I'm perfectly fine with that. So I'm just going to let this thing sit here and cook with a low load for a couple of hours, and we'll see what's going to happen. Now, I don't think these lugs are actually getting hot. I think that is me reflecting in the front of them because they do have a high reflectivity. So if you look at the heat shrink right here, it's nice and cool, but the lugs appear to be hot. I think that's a heat reflection. Alright, well, I don't see anything that I need to really address at this moment. Caps are starting to warm up very, very slightly, which I would expect. But once again, that could be a reflection on the top of the unit, because if you look at the heat shrink on the capacitors, they are nice and cool. And what is, oh, those are the driver transistors, I do believe. It's hard to tell where, yeah, those are the driver transistors. They are definitely generating a little bit of heat as they switch on and off at 40 something kilohertz. But we're going to let this cook for, like I said, a couple of hours, maybe overnight, I'm not sure, and we'll get back into it. Okay, well, I've had this thing running for over 12 hours right now, and I did end up connecting up a separate light to it. I have a old school fluorescent spiral CFL bulb as well as the LED bulb over here. And I just wanted to make sure that we're running nice and cool everywhere. All the FETs are cool. And from what I can see, everything looks absolutely perfect. Output transistors are not even warm to speak of. Now I believe that that is a reflection. Yeah, see, if I put my hand over it, it's actually a reflection of the CFL light. So if I move the light out, you can see it's just reflecting off those pads. And yeah. So next I'm going to throw this thing all back together. Trying to be very careful. Check all the FETs and keep it connected the whole time. So I'm going to throw this thing back together and we shall give it a higher current test. And of course, no cats on the workbench. And just one more thing I wanted to check. I want to make sure that all stages are providing some sort of power. So knowing that these fuses are DC, I have my meter on the millivolt DC range, and I just want to measure across every fuse, and I want to see some kind of a drop. So I've got 0.8 millivolts, 0.8, 0.2, 0.8. Now these should all be, those are all negative voltages. These should be positive because it's a mirror image. So 0.6, 0.2, 0.1, 0.2, 0.5. We could try to go into the high resolution mode. And let's see, this one was the 0.1, 0.2, I think. Yeah, saying 0.14. And we'll go back to regular. 0.4, 0.2, 0.8, and wait a minute. I must not been on there. So 0.1, that was not doing much. 0.2, 0.2, 0.6, and 0.5. So everything is working. I'm a bit concerned with this one channel, however. Oh, that's right, 0.7. I must just not have been on there well. I thought it was a positive. My bad. I thought I was wrong once, but I was mistaken. Okay, I had the scope out. I'm not going to show you that. I'm just looking at some different waveforms. Everything looks good. They're all pretty well matched, as close as this thing's going to get for being a square wave inverter. Excuse me, a modified sine wave inverter. Okay, well, the next step is put the two halves back together, and I'll get my lawn and tractor batteries. I'll get 3 of them set up, and we'll try to power a 1500 watt heater for a few seconds. Okay, well, there is the slave side all reassembled and ready to go. I do have all the transistor cross braces, whatever you want to call them, installed that apply pressure to each FET and the output FETs on both sides. There you go, and they are torqued to factory spec, good and tight. Okay, well, there is the slave. Let's get the master reassembled, and then we can mate these two halves in holy matrimony. Okay, well, there is the other half, the master side, completely reassembled, ready to go. Everything's torqued once again, good and tight torque specs. I just got to put the front plate on it. There's a ground wire that attaches to a little screw hole over here on the side. I got to connect the cables from the master to the slave side, and then we can throw this thing back together and give it a higher current test. All right, so I have the inverter connected. I have a battery voltage meter connected directly to the terminals. I don't know if you can see it, but they're not connected to the actual batteries. I want to see the terminal voltage. I have a kilowatt connected. I've got 3 lawn and tractor batteries. 250 cranking amps is what they're rated at, but that's down to 9 volts. I just want to see if this thing will do any kind of power at all. So here we go, power on. And I do have the heater on low right now. And so let's get the kilowatt up to the display. We'll just go to straight watts. Now it's saying 127 watts just for the blower, which I find hard to believe. So let's go to low. We're pulling 13, 14 amps right now. And something, I'm not sure what that was. Something made a pop and it pulled down. Might have been a connection. I just have this thing connected with a clamp back here, which is hard to see. Well, there's 1600 watts. We're pulling 52 amps, which isn't bad. There's medium, 900 watts. Interesting, why is the fan not running? Let's go back to low. Back to high. 1100, 1300. We're pulling 48 amps. I'm happy with that. 55 amps. We're down to 33 volts and dropping. Actually, it's rising because the batteries are starting to heat up. Let's look at the voltage output under full load. We're pulling down to 116 volts. That's not bad. Power factor should be pretty good, 0.99, because it's resistive. Okay, I'm not sure what the pop was, but it's working perfectly fine. So let's shut this little heater off. Power the unit down. And we'll power it back on. Put the fan on low. I don't see any issues. Might have just been a connection issue with one of the leads. I still wonder why the fan's not running, unless there's a thermal sensor in there somewhere and it has to get warm enough before the fan actually begins to run. Yeah, it's not even trying to run. Interesting. I don't know if that's normal on these units or not. Okay, I'm going to disconnect it, and I guess I'll pop the top and see if I can figure out what controls this fan, and if anything. Things all back together. I tested the fan, and the fan is good. It's not being driven by the inverter, so I believe that there's probably a thermal sensing device somewhere, not on a heatsink, just on the circuit board to detect when the board's starting to get hot. And I did check the other carcass that I have, the one I stole the transistor off of. I just went ahead and bridged 2 of the pins on it so I could fire this up, and it behaves exactly the same way. So the fan is not being driven on that one either. So I think it's just the way they manufactured the unit. But I do have a brand spanking new 200 watt incandescent bulb, which you still can purchase. So I'm just going to go ahead and power this thing on. Okay, power has been applied. We see 122 volts. Let's get over to watts. I can barely see the stupid thing. Okay, I think that is watts right there. And we'll plug in this bulb. And, oh, you can't see a thing. Maybe if I move the bulb a little farther away. It says it's 210 watts that it's drawing right now. And according to the display on the unit, we are at about 37 volts We don't have an overtemp or an overload. Obviously there is a thermal sensor in here somewhere because of the overtemp light on the end of the unit. And as far as percentage goes, we're not drawing basically any percentage on this unit. It's got a display that goes 0 to 200% of what you can run on this thing. Anyhow, it's running, it's like I said, 210 watts right there. Man, it's hard to see. 1.73 amps, and we have 123.3 volts. Great power factor. Wow, look at that. 60.7 hertz, 214 VA, and 209 watts. I'd expect that with a really good power factor like that. Anyhow, I'm going to wrap up this video. The pop, I can't explain what the pop was. Nothing is crispied inside this inverter. I checked all 16 fuses again. If we had a defective FET, it would have popped one of the fuses most definitely. But that's going to wrap it up. What a long, long road on this inverter. I'm going to get it ready, boxed up, and get it shipped to my customer, who I think is in Pennsylvania, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, Pennsylvania. So I'll get it boxed up. I'm going to ship it back to her. I'm not going to charge for this portion of the repair just because of the damaged board. I can't guarantee it. I just want it to work. I'm not even going to charge for shipping. I'm just going to eat this whole time. I've got like 6 hours into this unit. And I'm just going to cut my losses and call it a day. Well, I certainly hope you enjoyed the repair on the Ames power inverter, PWR INV 5036W. I'm not going to charge the customer for this. I can't guarantee it because of the carbon on that board. It might last a week, a month. It might last 10 years. I don't know. I just don't want to be connected to this thing for too long. I'm going to send this back to the customer at no charge. I'm even going to cover return shipping at no charge for this customer, just to get it done and hopefully make the customer happy, and hopefully they'll get more life out of it. If you could please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and like this video. It really does help my channel grow. You can follow me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at NorCal715. You can email me, norcal715videos@gmail.com. As of right now, that is not the best way to contact me, September of 2023. If you want to contact me, please leave a comment on one of the videos. And I do check those periodically, much more than I have a chance to check the emails. Remember, with your help, we can try to keep these things out of the landfill, out of the recycle bin, and out of the e-waste facility. Everyone, thank you for making it to the end of this very, very long road video. I really, really appreciate it. Everyone, have a great day. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye. Yeah, I'm definitely not Louis Rossmann. I don't think I want to proceed any farther on this unit. I do have a bunch of time and a bunch of parts invested into this. And I do see a single plate through right there that has been damaged. I think that went to the collector. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, without that plate through right there, I mean, I could run a jumper through it to the back of the board. But I think I'm going to bow out. That trace has been slipped. So yeah, that trace is moved. I think it's connected to this one, to that resistor right there. This trace goes to one of the pins of this regulator IC right there. And we'll have to figure out that plate through, which I can probably wire around. The board is so carbonized. I mean, just look at the amount of carbon. This thing ran hot for a long, long time. I'm thinking the problem might have been this was connected backwards, which would explain why virtually every single FET in the unit was damaged. I'm going to have to look back through my emails. I think I had the customer prepay some of the parts. I'm not 100% sure. It's been almost a year ago at this point. And if the customer did prepay any parts, I'm going to go ahead and just refund that amount to the customer and just cut my losses. I've invested way too much time on this unit. Once again, if anyone has schematics on this and they can provide one, I can probably make it work. We have to stand a component up on this board to make it actually happen. But I don't want to marry this thing for the rest of my life. I'm already married. I'm very happy with the wife that I currently have. And I don't need to marry an Ames power inverter at this point. Well, another failure. That's the way it goes. Everyone have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Check, check. 1, 2, 3. Okay, well there is the slave inverter board completely reassembled. Got all the braces on the output transistors. I've torqued them to factory spec, which is hecka tight. And we're almost to the point of stripping, but not quite. We could probably go another half a turn before it starts stripping. So check the insulators for damage. Everything looks good. So once again, this is the slave side completely reassembled. And next we'll throw the master side back together. Okay, take two. This is the good and tight, not hecka tight. Okay. Okay, check, check, check. 1, 2, 3. Sound. Check, check, check. Oh God, I hope it didn't cut out. What is going on here? Well, I think I need to repair the microphone. One lead came off. And yeah, if I let go of it, as long as I keep it attached, it's got sound. One moment. Oh my God, the gift that keeps on giving. Everyone, thank you for making it to the end of this video. I really, really appreciate it. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at NorCal715. You can email me NorCal715videos@gmail.com. As of right now, September of 2023, if you want to contact me, go ahead and comment on one of my videos. I check those more than anything. You can email me. It's been so long. I'm still trying to get caught up. Let's see. Yeah, if you could go ahead and hit the subscribe button and like this video, it really does help my channel grow. Yeah, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X, all that stuff. Let's just take that again. Okay,